live. I'm reading out of Lord of the Horizon. It's another of Joan Marshall Grant's Far Memory books. This is a continuation of a story of Ra-Ab. We have met Ra-Ab in the eyes of Horus, and he is now 21. And there is a new pharaoh, Amenemhet. We are in chapter 3 of this. Is it chapter 3? No, chapter 4. We are in chapter 4, entitled Royal Wife, and I've already read part of it. So Amenemhet has chosen a wife. For Kia's sake, I was glad to see that the Princess Nefertari did not resemble her father. She had black hair and eyes of a curious dark grey, spaced very wide. She wore a headdress of gold and turquoise flowers, and a dress of blue mist linen, elaborately pleated and embroidered with gold bees. She sat between Ramois and her betrothed husband, and 2 fan-bearers stood behind her chair during the meal. Amenemhet was old enough to be her father, and he treated her as though he were. She only spoke when she was asked a question, and even then I felt that she had been trained in the correct answer, that her words held no spontaneity. And at the end of the meal, the women, on Mary's suggestion, went out into the garden. I hoped fervently that she would find a way by which the little princess would escape a marriage which promised so little happiness to either of them. Amenemhet turned to me and said, "Now that you have met my future wife, do you compliment me on my choice?" She is beautiful, and her beauty is of a type which will increase with the years. Her grace and dignity are already remarkable. "With that I must be content," he said with a smile, "until you've had the opportunity to judge her other qualities. You spoke truly when you told me that she shows no trace of foreign blood. I presume that when she is married, her mother will no longer continue to live at the palace?" "That has not yet been decided. In any case, it is not a matter of importance." "It's not for me to comment on your decisions, but parents are not always propitious company in which to build from marriage the first rung of a ladder leading to the stars." He laughed. "I shall remember your advice, and should I fall into any errors from which your experience as a husband might rescue me, you will receive a summons to the palace." The royal guests left early. As soon as they had gone, I asked Mary, "Did you succeed? Is there any chance that she will release him?" "None. I begin to believe that father is right about the Babylonian. That poor child dare not think for herself. Her mother has decided that she is to marry Pharaoh, and it would never occur to her to question the decision. I asked her if she loved him, and she said, of course, it is the law to love one's husband. I told her that love does not recognize any laws except its own, and as though she were repeating a lesson, she answered, children cannot know their own hearts until they're grown up. If I obey my mother, I shall be happy, and if I obey my husband, I shall be content. I'm very fortunate to be Queen of Egypt. Even the rebels dared not break the line of succession, so it is through me that Amenemhet will rule. I shall be Pharaoh, though by my generosity I shall allow him to hold the crook and flail. One day I shall have a daughter, or even a son, and when they rule I shall be the most important person in the two lands, for the royal mother is even more important than the queen. Then I asked her, haven't you ever dreamt of meeting someone whom you loved very much, loved because your heart told you he was your dear companion, not just because your mother said it would be expedient? She wasn't offended, but I could see she was puzzled. What an odd thing to say. I'm going to be Queen of Egypt. Unless I marry Amenemhet, he will no longer be Pharaoh. And then there must be another war, and many Egyptians will be killed as my father was killed, and it would be as though they died by my hand. How could I wish to murder thousands of our people because I was so foolish as to allow my heart to lead me away from the man I'm intended to marry? Next chapter. Teshen, who on my previous visit to the city I had known as the only clear flame in a dark temple, had now been made high priest, and it was he who officiated at the royal marriage. The day before we left for the Oryx, Mary and I went to see him. "I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk with you both," he said, "for it is easier to ask a favor than to send it in cold writing signs with the hand of a messenger. If there is any favor which is in my power to grant you, you have only to name it." "Make no such promise until you have heard for what I'm going to ask," he answered with a smile. "The man who must haggle over favors acquires no merit for generosity. You are building additions to your temple. Do you wish for gold or fine buildings as stone?" "I want something more valuable than either, the man who can fashion them. In the Oryx, you have the greatest living goldsmith, the sculptor who has no equal in Egypt. Once he came to this temple to take measurements for a statue, but when he found it was to be made in Set's image, he suffered mutilation rather than debase his art. Would it not be fitting if Neku, the goldsmith, were to create god statues here, and that our new offerings vessels were made from his designs? In that request it is I who received the favor, for nothing would give us greater joy than for Neku to be so rewarded for his steadfastness. He shall start on the drawings immediately. I bring him your instructions, and if you wish, he shall bring them to you when they are completed." I was interested to see that wherever Set or Sekhmet or any other symbol of the shadow had been depicted, the stone had been cut away. Sometimes the effect of this was curious, for as on the entrance pylon, where Set and Ra had been shown as brother gods, Ra was now facing an outline which showed where his traditional enemy had once been honored. "Amenemhet at first thought to have the building razed to the ground," said Teten, "but I advised him to let it remain, as a reminder that though Set has been overthrown, he must be continually kept in subjection. It is useless to tell men that evil does not exist, for until they are strong enough to know and withstand its power, they will not have the strength to receive the radiance of the completed light. Where they used to be told that nothing exists save beauty and divine compassion, they would be like small children who require to be protected from danger because they have not yet sufficient strength to guard themselves. Was I unwise to order that the temple of Sekhmet at the old capital be destroyed? Pataharu told me that evil might live even in a grain of dust, so not only did I cause the structures to be demolished, but said the ground on which it was built should be set apart for 50 years. A wise precaution and very necessary, unless your priests cleansed with power the evil from the stone. But why did you set 50 years as a measuring rod for evil?" "I thought that by then the evil done there would have been forgotten, and so no longer have power to capture men's imagination." "The years may rob a copper knife of its keen edge, but millennia do not diminish the power of evil, for it is not compassed by time as we know it. The good that a man does liveth after him, for it shares eternity with his spirit. So does evil live until the spirit gave it birth has been cleansed. Power is continuous until its direction is changed. Good is the current which carries the boat of millions of years on the river of eternity, and evil is the name of the eddies in that river, which for a while drive back against the flow." "Then why didn't you destroy this temple?" asked Mary. "The burning of certain herbs can cleanse a building after a pestilence, and there are many ways by which more subtle evils may also be rendered harmless." "What happened to the priests of Set when Amenemhet came to the throne? Were they all killed, as were those I condemned at the old capital?" "They were taken before Pharaoh for judgment. The only one of them who had real power was Kepha, and him you saw destroyed by the hawk of Horus. The priests here had no right to be given the priestly privilege, so they were judged as ordinary criminals, which they were, although they wore the robes of a caste to which they did not rightfully belong. Are any of them still alive? None. Men almost as corrupt as they have been sentenced only to exile. But had these men gone to a foreign country, they might have found fertile soil in which to plant the weeds we have uprooted. They had accumulated vast treasure, and this has been given into pharaohs for keeping, except for such part as it is required to rebuild this temple and make the changes necessary under the rule of Ra. The rest is being distributed throughout Egypt for the building of new temples, thus benefiting the people from whom it has been stolen. I understand also that Ra-Ab is using it for his reform, to build storehouses for the exchange of produce. You will have already heard that the oryx is to receive sufficient to build a temple worthy of its great position in the new Egypt. So, this is another end of part, but continuing chapter 4 later. Wishing all a happy solstice.